Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first online ASO TalkBack. I'm your host, Thomas Moore. I'm the Director of Marketing for the Akron Symphony Orchestra. Today's special guests are violin players Kimia Ghaderi and Sara Schaft, and principal oboe player Terry Orcutt. If you have any questions, feel free to share them in the comments section, and we will try to get to as many of them as we can. So now I'm going to turn everything over to our moderator, Kimia Ghaderi.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Kimia, and I'm a violinist and the development manager with the Akron Symphony. And we're doing our first ever virtual talkback today. We started our talkback series last season, and we held them at E.J. Thomas Hall after our classic series concerts. It was a great way to connect with all of you, our audience, and talk about specific programs, composers, and just our lives as musicians. And this year, with all of the virtual content we're providing, we figured that talkbacks are one of the things that we can most certainly carry on with. So I'm very happy to be joined today by Sara and Terry. And I'd like to start by just asking, maybe Sara can start talking about yourself. Let us know who you are, where you're from.
Hi, Kimia and Terry and Tom. My name's Sara. I play the violin. I've been playing in Akron with the Akron Symphony for 22 years. I live in Youngstown, and so I do commute to Akron. And fortunately, I can commute to many other places as well to kind of tie up my freelancing career. I also drive up to Cleveland and Pittsburgh. My husband, Glenn Schaft, is a percussionist at Youngstown State. So that's why we're living in Youngstown. We have two children, and they're both Youngstown State students as well. So we're Youngstown State fans here. And let's see, anything else? That's all.
Did you grow up in Ohio?
No, I went to school though at Baldwin Wallace, and I was born in Northfield, Minnesota. I still have a sister there. Well, she's not in Northfield, but she lives in Farmington, and I have another sister out in Vancouver, and a brother who is a cellist, and he is living in Colorado Springs. So we had good schools in Minnesota, and we took advantage of the teachers that we had, private teachers, and our parents were big music appreciation people. And so we, I think, started off really well there, but then, I haven't really lived in Minnesota since I graduated from high school. So I'd go back and visit now and then. And but I've been in Ohio now for, like I said, 22 years. So.
Great, thanks, Sara. How about you, Terry?
I'm actually born and raised in Ohio. And other than a small stint where I was in New York City for school, I've pretty much been here my whole life. I've been playing I've been playing in the Akron Symphony since 2006. When I joined the symphony, I joined as second oboe, and then an opening opened up for principal, and I auditioned, and so I became principal oboe the next season, 2007. I am from the Medina area. I've been playing oboe since 7th grade, so quite a long time now. I actually started on the flute, though. It's not very common for people to start on the oboe. There are certain challenges to the instrument that make it difficult for young, small hands to accommodate. And I started on the flute in the 4th grade, and I eventually switched to oboe. And I had a very sweet man, his name is Fred Hayburn, who started me on the oboe, a very good musician, and sort of started me in one of these little music stores. And I eventually graduated on to studying with who was then the university professor of oboe at the University of Akron, Jim Ryan, and he was also my predecessor in the Akron Symphony. And I studied with him for just about 6 years, something like that. And then I moved on to conservatory in New York City, and then I came back to Cleveland for my master's, and I've been here ever since. I also play in principal oboe in the Canton Symphony, and I freelance around the area, playing with various groups. My wife is a clarinet player. She plays in the Canton Symphony with me, but she also plays in the Pittsburgh Opera and Ballet with Sara. So there's a lot of overlap of musicians in this area.
Yeah, there definitely is. And one of the things that's great about this area is that there are so many different ensembles, orchestras, chamber music series that we can be involved in. It's one of the reasons that I decided to do my master's degree in Cleveland at the Cleveland Institute of Music, because it seemed like people I knew who moved to Ohio or were in Ohio had opportunities to be playing and working and teaching quite a bit too. And it's a small world of music, even though we get spread out. I mean, Sara was sharing how she has a brother who plays cello outside of Ohio, right, Sara?
Yes, he's in Colorado Springs.
Right. Yeah. And one of the things I've noticed as a musician is that even though we get very spread out, that there's still a really tight network. And so I was wondering if you guys could share a little bit about your experiences playing together as colleagues, maybe not only with Akron Symphony, but if you've had any experiences also perhaps outside of Akron Symphony, or any other connections that you have as musicians.
Want me to start? I don't know.
Sure.
Well, Terry, I don't know how you feel when you go on your freelance gigs. This is when we're not playing in the Akron Symphony. As a string player, you often you try not to look too much, but you look around and see who's there. Like if there's a familiar face, a friendly face. So I often look to see who the woodwinds are, and sometimes it's some of the same people that I play with in Akron. And sometimes I'm surprised it's someone I haven't seen in a while. And so then it's always a lot of fun. I didn't know how fun it was until the day came when we are not playing right now. And so that's, and then you always play the game when you're talking to other musicians. You play the game like, oh, I know so-and-so, or, from such and such a place. And that's the way it was for, I got to know Terry through Alex, because we carpooled she would come as far as Youngstown, and we'd hook up and drive the rest of the way down to Pittsburgh. And so I got to know, nothing bad, Terry, I promise it. But I learned a lot about woodwinds and the instruments themselves. And she'd talk about, what you have to do as a woodwind player to get warmed up, and to, something we don't have to do so much. I mean, we have to warm up, but we don't have to build reeds and whatever. So it was a lot of fun. It was interesting. And I enjoy that part, that part of being a musician, just the personal part so much. And you get used to that. And so.
Yeah, that's great. Terry, did you want to share anything?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo a lot of what Sara said. It's a lot of fun to travel around this area to various freelance gigs, because as most people know, Akron Symphony is what's considered a regional orchestra. It's not a full-time position. And there are a lot of regional orchestras around, which is what freelancers do. They sort of piece together all these parts together for their career. And it can be quite a bit different than playing in a salaried full-time orchestra, in that you kind of have to have an outrageous amount of flexibility as a musician and a person, because you're constantly working with different musicians and different personalities, and sometimes in positions that maybe that's not the position you have you're contracted for in some of your main orchestras. Like I'm principal oboe in Akron and Canton, but many times I have to step into the role of second oboe, which is a completely different and unique world that you have to step into. Your job is completely different when you play second wind positions, as the difference would be demonstrably different if you were sitting concertmaster or section violin, or any section string for that matter. So I think it gives freelance musicians a lot of flexibility that way, and being quick on your feet to adjust to many different situations, which I enjoy. It also makes it very enjoyable and keeps you intellectually stimulated.
Absolutely. And I know I think with Sara, we've played at least together in Cleveland Pops Orchestra and Blue Water Chamber Orchestra. I've only played with Blue Water on a few occasions, but it's definitely true that anytime you go play with any number of the regional orchestras around here, that you're bound to see people that you know from other places. And then also, like Terry said, adjusting to the fact that it's never the exact same combination of musicians, and the orchestra is never going to sound or feel exactly the same. I actually did a little bit of research into our last spring concerts and found that the last concert that we all played together, the three of us, was the February Akron Classic concert, which was the Beethoven Leonore Overture, Schubert Unfinished Symphony, and the Mozart Requiem. I was wondering if you guys have any specific memories from that concert week, or the thoughts that were going through your mind following that concert week as the world began to change very suddenly and the rest of our season totally morphed into something we didn't expect it to.
Well, at least I can say when you talk to an oboe player about Mozart's Requiem, it's very sad for us because we don't get to take part. Mozart didn't write any oboe parts for the Requiem, and it's one of these, just one of the most wonderful pieces ever written. So there's a certain sadness for oboe players that we don't get to partake in something so wonderful. But the Schubert Unfinished Symphony, the Schubert's Eighth Symphony, at least for me, has a very special place. It's such a warm, intimate work that kind of gets a bad rap sometimes because I think most musicians would agree it's what we tend to call a youth orchestra piece, because it's accessible enough that youth orchestras can perform it and perform it well and get a lot of experience out of performing that work. But because of that, it tends to be forgotten down the line, and even though it's one of the most popular pieces out there, it seems to be rarely performed by professional ensembles, and I think that does the piece a disservice. I mean, there are reasons why certain pieces are some of the most popular and recognizable of all time, is because they're great pieces. Beethoven's Fifth Symphony is another great example of this, where everybody seems to have a modern sensibility that, oh my God, we shouldn't play that. It's such a tired old piece. Well, there's a reason why we used to play that piece. It's because it's one of the best symphonies ever written. So I was very pleased to be able to play Schubert's Unfinished in a professional setting. It was very rewarding for me anyway.
That's great. I know exactly what you mean about Beethoven 5, especially because I've had, I think by this point, 6 or 7 opportunities to play Beethoven 9, if you can believe it. And I actually, in all of my years of playing Beethoven symphonies, have played Beethoven 5, I think only once. And if my memory serves me correctly, I think I did a movement of it once for an outdoor parks concert. And the only other time I played it was in youth orchestra. And I'm just dying to play that piece again now as a professional, and it's rarely programmed. But maybe, this year is a Beethoven anniversary year. So maybe as we get into concerts more, even in 2021, that'll be revisited. Sara, do you have any favorite Akron Symphony memories, or do you remember anything special or significant about that last concert that we played in Akron in February?
Well, I was just thinking back about that time, that in general. I don't have anything specific about that week, but you know, those three composers, Schubert, Beethoven, and Mozart, I mean, it just, they're such favorites for musicians, and I'm just so grateful that we get to play some of these classics, because like we were saying earlier, what we do as musicians, we have to, as freelancers, we have to really be very flexible. One day we're playing pops, the next day we're playing opera, the next weekend we're doing you know, a show, and we're playing in the pit. I always feel, this is my personal opinion, I really enjoy going back to the classics and playing some of these, you know, the Leonora, the Unfinished Symphony. I mean, I remember playing that also as a youth, in a youth symphony somewhere. And the Requiem, I maybe played, well, yeah, probably about 10 times. I can't count the number of times I played that piece, but all three of those pieces are just wonderful pieces. So I guess that week was a great memory. And of course, sometimes it's hard. It's like when we were just recently observing the 9/11, people always remember exactly where they were and what they were doing when that happened. And I remember exactly the very last concert I played before things shut down in Ohio anyway. And it wasn't in Akron. It was in, the last concert I played was in Youngstown, with the Youngstown Symphony. So that kind of overshadows all the probably really good memories I have of the concert, the last one that we played together in Akron in February. So I guess that's just some of my memories of that time.
Yeah. Terry, do you have any new interests or hobbies or skills that you've been revisiting over the past few months with the change of schedule that we've all experienced?
Well, a few years ago, my wife and I got interested on Netflix with the Great British Baking Show.
Oh.
And with everything shut down, that provided a very nice opportunity to get a lot of baking in. And fortunately, the scale is demonstrating that beautifully now, how successful I was getting the baking going. So I've really gotten into baking. I've also tried to make an effort in trying to get some more classical literature under my belt, that I've sort of things that I always meant to read, but or there are things that I sort of half-heartedly read in high school because I had to, and going back and revisiting them and just sort of trying to recognize their importance and why they're important, sort of what we try to convey with our music as well. I mean, it's all the arts in the end. And my wife and I also, we took advantage of the beautiful summer we had here in the Midwest by really throwing ourselves into our garden too. We've had a very amenable landlord situation. He allows us to have both front yard and backyard vegetable gardens, as well as doing whatever we want with the landscaping. So we've taken that to heart, and we're known in our neighborhood as, oh, that's the house with the front yard vegetable garden. So
Nice.
that's brought us a lot of joy this summer. Anyway.
Do you have any favorite kinds of desserts to bake? Are you more of a cake baker, cookies, something totally different?
Mostly bread, actually.
Oh, okay.
I've been experimenting with different kinds of bread, although I haven't gone down the sourdough route, which a lot of people were doing this summer. But I've tried like puff pastry from scratch and trying my hand at danishes and things like that. Yeah.
Yum. You should keep that skill going once we all get back together more, and then you can bring some pastries to our orchestra rehearsals.
Hey, Terry, I'm going to jump in real quick. We've been kicking around the idea of doing a cooking with segment, so we might have to book you for one of our, if you're open to show us how to bake bread.
Well, one of my favorite bread recipes I got online, the initial proofing of the bread takes 18 hours. So I don't know if that's conducive to a live feed.
You can do a cut and then 18 hours later.
Exactly. Meanwhile.
Yeah. Sarah, what have you been up to recently?
Well, I'm the mom still, even though our kids are 21 year, we have twin boys and they're 21 years old. And but they're still living at home and going into campus. And so I just kind of fell back on just making sure everybody's got something to eat every day, and kind of just making sure everybody's well and happy. And it's a good job. I enjoy it, and I too have been cooking because I have the time to cook now, and so I've just been doing more of that, and it's kind of fun to kind of see how long I can go between trips to the grocery store. What I've got in my freezer, how long I can keep it going and still keep them interested in the meals I'm making. So that's kind of fun. And another thing I've done quite a bit lately is I've been emailing with my two sisters, the one that's still in Minnesota and the other one in Vancouver. And we've really gotten to just enjoy each other this way. And I have a mom too who's still living and she's in Sebring, Ohio at Copeland Oaks. She's doing very well. And the three of us even started a little book club online together. And so we're enjoying that. And I like to spend a lot of time every day just being outside, walking. We have a dog, so I kind of have to do that every day. And bike riding, a little bit of yard work, but, keeps me busy.
Yeah, and it has been a really beautiful summer here. And one of the things I've loved doing is visiting more of the Cleveland Metro parks, because I think prior to March, I had probably only really been to about 3 of them. I think by now I've probably more than doubled that amount and have found some really special new places that I love to visit regularly. One of them is, oh gosh, am I going to remember the name of it? It's near the Brecksville Reservation, but not exactly the Brecksville Reservation, but some really beautiful waterfalls and places to sit by the water, rocks. It's been really relaxing. So try to enjoy that as long as we can before the winter comes. Have you guys been listening to much music since the summer, over the summer, or kind of taking a break from listening more and enjoying more of the quiet?
I can't speak for Sarah, of course, but it's for a musician, a professional musician, it can be a weird thing because listening to music, the way our brains work is we're constantly assessing and trying to, well, I would have done it this way, or this isn't quite perfect, and blah, 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 all this. That's just the way our mind, because that's what we have to do for as a professional musician, is constantly assess and improve. So listening to classical music especially sometimes can kind of seem like work, even though we love the music. It has a work aspect to it, and because music is something that's so integral to who we are, it's not just a job for us, that this pandemic kind of ripped that out of our lives in a very significant way. It can sort of offer, I don't want to say a dark reminder, but sometimes you just need a break and just sort of pause and put things aside and sort of concentrate on family and things that are things you can control anyway.
Yeah, I agree with many of your points. How about you, Sarah?
Yeah, I was thinking about, oh boy, caught in the spotlight, what are you listening to? And I'm thinking, it's true. When we're working, we're already listening all the time to everything we're doing, and we're listening in ways most people maybe don't. A lot of people put music on in the background and while they're doing something else. It's not what we do. So my favorite listening is live. When Glenn's more of a jazzer. When we go to concerts, that's our favorite way to listen to music. And so now can't really do that. It's been difficult. No concerts really, and that you can watch a little, desktop video or something, but that's just not nearly the same as live for us. So yeah, and so sometimes I enjoy the quiet. It's a new skill to learn to just be quiet and not busy and not, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to go here, I got to go there. It's actually been a good time to, learn how to do that again, and you need these off times to try to regroup, or kind of cliche, but that's kind of the way it is.
Yeah, sometimes having the silence and really just being comfortable in the silence can help you slow down and ease into the pace of the day a little bit better. So yeah, I haven't been listening to a lot of classical music, but so I do like to listen to some indie folk and even some ambient music, just in the background sometimes while I'm working, or even just doing the dishes or something. But it's been interesting because I realized recently I haven't really opted to listen to a lot of orchestra music. And I wonder if part of that is sort of, as Terry was saying, the reminder that it's one thing that we aren't able to do right now is the full symphonic concerts yet. So we'll all just look forward to when we can. And in the meantime, with the Akron interlude season, we are doing chamber music and solo performances in the community. We have a lot of online performances with ASO at home. Things like this, our talkbacks and our ASO conversations with individual musicians that Tom is hosting. And in addition to continuing a lot of educational content for students in our community as well. So we're really early on in the interlude season so far, but I was wondering if maybe Terry, you could talk about an experience that you had doing one of our link up videos recently, or have you done the link up video yet?
Yeah, I'm not very tech savvy at all. And so this was actually the first video like this that I've ever recorded. These videos that some of us were asked to make for our Link Up children's concert intrigued me because I've been principal oboe since probably about 1999. And so I've done countless children's concerts. I've done countless demonstrations on these are the woodwinds, this is the oboe. And so I felt very confident about, like, I know how to do this. So if I just had to figure out how do I incorporate that into the technical challenges of what we have to do now. But I've always found those children's concerts to be actually incredibly rewarding for us to put on. And I hope they're rewarding for the kids as well, because we can sort of introduce a whole new generation to what we do and why we do it, which isn't always an easy thing, but I think it's easier to put it in a way for children to absorb easily, that sometimes if adult potential concert goers don't have that experience when they're young of at least getting introduced to it, it seems to be a much higher learning curve perceived by potential concert goers. And that's one of our, or at least one of my personal things that I'd like to see if we can bridge that gap a little better. I have the feeling that there are a lot of adult potential concert goers out there that would very much be interested in checking out a concert experience and seeing what it's all about. But there's this sort of myth surrounding concert performances that they're elitist, or there are all these protocols, and I'm just afraid I'm just going to do something wrong when I'm there. And I wish we could get past that, because so much of what's perceived as protocols are either don't exist, or when they're explained why certain protocols are there, they're for practical reasons and not for holding it over people to make others feel better about themselves. One that I think a lot of potential concert goers wonder is, why are you so dressed up? Why are you all in like full tuxedos and the women in full black concert dress? And well, there is a certain formality to that, and I think part of that is you want to just make it seem like an event, because there's so much recorded music out there, and there's so many things that you can get on video content out there at home, and some people have home theater systems, that you have to sort of create an event atmosphere so people will come to our concerts, because they will realize that, yes, seeing something live is quite a bit different than seeing, even with the highest production values, seeing on video. But also, there's an aspect to the formal attire that I don't think a lot of people realize, is what we do is oral, and it's all for the ears. And in a certain respect, having a uniform dress code on the stage removes a distraction from what is supposed to be the primary art that you're supposed to be paying attention to. So I would hope that people would not see some of these trappings, as some people would call them, as elitist or diffident or that sort of thing, but it's actually trying to remove distraction and boil down our art to what you're really supposed to be focusing on, and that's the music. Sorry, I took that ball and ran with it.
A lot of great points. Thank you so much. And if either of you have any other things that come to mind that you'd like to talk about, please feel free now. If not, we can move on to some questions if we have some from our audience, or if Tom has any questions for us.
Kimia, I did have an anecdote that I wanted to relay that's sort of related to what we were talking about previously, about how sometimes when we're listening to music, it can seem like work because of the constant assessment. There's a very famous French horn player in the Cleveland Orchestra who relayed this story to me one time, and I thought it was funny and very telling of what we were talking about. He occasionally would go and get massages to work out the tension, because what we do is an athletic activity as well as a mental one, and we can have a lot of knots in our shoulders and everything that we need some professionals to help us out with. So it never fails. He goes to a massage therapist and gets on the massage table, and they start working, and the first thing they start playing is Mozart in the background. And he said, for a French horn player, you couldn't possibly pick something more stressful to listen to when you're getting a massage.
Oh man, I wonder if he asked them to change it, or if he just...
He did.
He
Yeah,
did.
he's like, turn on some forest noise or some rain, whatever.
Okay, good for him. Better not to suffer.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, do we have any questions?
Actually, I had a couple that came up just, from the discussion here. This one is for Terry. You were talking about how, for your instrument, you have to build your own reed. And is reed building kind of an art form? Is it a universal, or does each individual player, so do you build reed specifically for yourself and it would only be unique to you? Or is it just kind of like reed building is just, I can just pick it up, I can just do it and, roll with it?
That's a very good question. And there's a lot not known out there about oboes and reeds specifically. There is a set way of making reeds. I should say there are two distinct styles. First of all, there's American style oboe reeds, and then there are European style oboe reeds, and they look the exact same from far away, but they're quite different up close. Putting that aside, there is a set American style of making reeds. Having said that, everybody has different construction in their embouchure. Everybody has different needs and different physical attributes athletically that makes them who they are. And so you do have to learn how to make reeds so well personally that you can custom tailor them to what you specifically need as a person. If I had a colleague that we were very similar players and had very similar concepts of what we were going for, I could try the reed and it would probably seem like it was 80% of what I needed, but there's still that extra 20% that I really need to do it myself, because only I know how I can tailor my reed for what I know I need to do on the instrument. And these skills and this process goes back hundreds of years. I mean, the reeds themselves haven't changed too much since Mozart's time, when the oboe went through a huge break from the Baroque period. What would have been J.S. Bach's or George Friedrich Handel's oboe that they would have been familiar with. There was a huge change in Mozart's era. But from that point on, the reeds got pretty standardized at that point going forward, as did the instrument.
I have a follow-up.
Does that help answer the question?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I had a follow-up question, which is the European versus American style really a regional difference, or are there some Americans that prefer the European style reed and some Europeans that may prefer the American style reed, and it's just based on the player's preferences?
It's pretty down to the borders of countries. Within Europe, there are some unique differences between like German and French and Dutch and British, but they're all essentially playing on a European short scrape reed, which is what it's called. Our reed was developed by sort of who's considered the godfather of American oboe playing, and that was my teacher, John Mack's teacher, Marcel Tabatel. He was principal of the Philadelphia Orchestra for a number of years, and he came from France and found himself in the Philadelphia Orchestra, conducted at that time by Stokowski. And Stokowski wanted a German sounding oboe player, and he was a French oboe player. And so he had to figure out a way to, what we essentially all have to do is satisfy the maestro on the podium of what they're going for. Otherwise, we won't have a job anymore. And so what he did was he developed what we consider the long scrape, or the American scrape oboe reed. And it's hard to go into too much detail without visual aids to explain really what I'm talking about. But the intent was, yes, the intent was to get more depth and a little darker sound, because at least at the time it was perceived that the German oboe players had a darker sound than the French sound, and Europeans short scrape reeds tend to have a much brighter sound, and they would say we all sound like clarinets over here, but
that's interesting. I didn't know that.
It's quite a distinct difference, so much so that it's pretty rare that an American style oboe player can go to Europe and get a job, and vice versa. It happens, but it's rare. because the difference really is that start. So.
Wow, I had no idea. Very interesting.
Okay. I actually got a question for Sara. This comes in on our Facebook page from old friend Sin Warren. I think everybody will recognize her. She wants to know, Sara, how did you go about choosing the violin? How did you make that be your instrument?
Well, when I was talking about the public schools in Minnesota, I have to say that at the time I was going to school, almost everybody had a string program. And so I was lucky enough. I was fortunate, really. My brother was older than me, or is older than me, and he chose the cello. And so it seemed we had, that was in the family. And I thought, well, I'll try a string instrument too. And I tried violin. And my parents were not musicians, but they were very supportive of us. So that's how I started, because we had just a great string program, and they had a nice a relationship with Schmidt Music in Minneapolis. There, I don't think they're there anymore, but they would come in with these beautiful student instruments, and they're all polished, and and they'd bring them into your classroom, and you'd look, well, what instrument do you want to play? And I saw that violin in that case with the plush green interior, and I was sold right away. And so, just kind of keep that in mind every time I open my violin case, where it all started. Thanks, Sam. Good question.
All right. Do we have any others, Tom, or is that it?
That we're caught up at the moment. I did have two more, and I don't know, not to have this be all Terry focused necessarily, but I'll toss this out to the group. But I don't know if he might be the only one who could answer this. You had talked, Terry, about there's a big difference between playing the principal part and then playing the second part. What from an audience perspective, we're sitting out there, it's like, well, you guys are all playing the same notes. What really makes that big difference? Is there some way that you guys can kind of summarize that a little bit?
Yeah, and I'm sure Sara also would have some insight on this as well, since she's stepped into the concertmaster position on numerous occasions. When you're playing a principal part, a huge part of your job is to put your artistic stamp on those passages that are heard out there, your solos. That's what the music director is looking for. That's why they hired you, is because you have something to offer, a unique voice to bring to the table to those solos. Oboe is very lucky in the respect that it has an inordinate amount of beautiful solos in the repertoire. So it's really something that we have to take to heart. Whereas if you're playing second oboe or a section position, your job is completely different in that when I'm playing second oboe, my job is to reinforce the principal in whatever they're doing and sort of be complementary, but also blend in. My job is not to stick out. My job is to create the cohesive whole that the orchestra in general is going for, and allow the principal the space to have that sort of firm platform that they can play the solos with great confidence and put it out there. And they know they have the backing to do that comfortably. Anyway, does that make sense?
Yes, that's really good. Sara, what do you have a perspective on this?
Well, I've played a lot of first violin and a lot of second violin. I play second violin quite a bit in the Pittsburgh Opera Orchestra. So yes, I sometimes, although as a principal wind player, you're really in the spotlight, I feel, way more than you would as a section violinist. It's true, you have those solos, and you better be on it. And as concertmaster, I haven't had to do concertmaster a lot in Akron, for which I'm grateful because it's high pressure. Maybe it's all in your head. I don't know. Maybe if you do it all the time, I think you get used to it. You get to the certain amount of pressure, and you just learn how to do that. But I think sometimes if you're a section leader, you just have to. Fortunately, I have a lot of experience, and so when I'm called to be sometimes principal second, or concertmaster, or just a principal player, you just learn how to count, come in, and just play. And even if you think, I don't know if this is right, you just have to play with conviction. And you just learn how to have that kind of attitude when you sit in that chair. If it's concertmaster or principal second, you just have a certain attitude that says, okay, I'm leading the herd. And it's I can't imagine that it's exactly the same though when you're playing, a principal wins, because you are so many times a soloist. But I'll tell you also, I've been in positions in the various groups that I've played at when I know instantly that that's Barb O'Brien, or that's not Barb O'Brien, or that's Terry, and that's not Terry. You become so used to that, the other players around you, that you become appreciative of each other. And I certainly appreciate some of the good woodwind playing in this area, Terry. So anyway.
Yeah, the wind players are so exposed even when you're not playing a solo because you're one on a part. It's something that a violin player in an orchestra never really has the experience of.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it also can be really important who is on the podium too, because a good conductor will provide the foundation that you need to play your solos in a manner that you can execute them well, and not micromanage. They can sort of tell you, like, this is the direction, what I'd like to achieve here, but I'm still going to give you the freedom to execute that how you know best how to do that. And that's one of the things that I enjoy about playing in the Akron Symphony is Maestro Wilkins is very good at that, and giving his principal players enough room to express themselves in ways that I don't know, I enjoy.
Well, I want to thank you all so much for joining us for this talk back today. It's been great for me to talk with you both. Sara and I have had chances to sit next to each other and talk backstage a lot more than Terry and I. So it was nice to talk to you and get to know you a little bit better too, Terry. And we will do more of these. We don't currently have another one firmly on the calendar yet, but keep your eyes out for more virtual talkbacks in the future. And thanks again, everybody. Stay well, and I'll look forward to the next time that we can all get together.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you guys. Really good job. Everybody, like Kimia said, we will be back soon with another ASO Talkback. Please like, share, and comment on the post to help us grow our network. Everybody stay safe, and we will see you soon.